Well, hello, friends, and welcome to this latest edition of the 360 Experience podcast. I am Tim Braheem, and I'm super excited to share this time with a good friend of mine, Mark Robertson. I think you're going to very much enjoy this dialogue with Mark. He's a man who speaks from his heart, shows an incredible amount of compassion and vulnerability, but on top of all of that, he's an outstanding loan originator, a very bright man that has a lot of wonderful strategies for today's marketplace and really utilizes who he truly is to leverage his gifts and to cultivate business. I want to tell you a little bit about Mark before we get started. He is a division president and a co-creator of Neo Home Loans. So people like Ryan Grant and Josh Metal and Danny Hirani and Chris Ledley, et cetera, are all partners of his. He's a part of the Leadership 360 family. He was a part of Leadership 360 Group 7, which was 5 years ago, so I've known him for that long. And he is also a co-founder and coach for Triibe Coaching, and just a wonderful guy. I really think that you're going to really, really love this conversation with Mark. We're going to talk about some of the things that he's doing right now to reconnect with real estate agents, go back into his past client database and connect with them. I think you're going to hear some really terrific scripting in this conversation. Mark's a very articulate guy. Before we get to the conversation with my friend Mark, what I want to do is just say thank you for watching the show and encourage you to subscribe on whatever podcast channel it is that you're listening to this on, whether it be Spotify, YouTube, or Apple. And if you like the show, we're always grateful if you give us your likes and make comments on YouTube, and make sure that you're forwarding it to anybody who you think would find value from listening to the show. As always, check the show notes in this podcast down below as we provide links to other resources. And without further ado, I want to introduce you to Mark Robertson. What's up, Marky Mark?
Hey, Tim. How are you, dude? Happy Friday.
Happy Friday to you too, and a pre-happy Father's Day. We're recording this. It'll air at the end of the summer, but we're recording it right now at the beginning of the summer. And love your smile, man. Like right out of the gate. Thanks for bringing the smile to the show. I appreciate
Thank you, man.
it.
Yeah, and happy Father's Day to you too.
Thank you, and welcome back. You got that little pilot headset on it. Where are we flying to today? You look like you're like a Southwest Airlines pilot.
Your audio is so good, and I listen to so many people's podcasts, and like their audio is so good. I'm doing it out of insecurity, if you must know.
No, sounds good. Your audio sounds good, so you're passing
Good.
the test. So, hey, listen, I want to dive right in, and then we'll give backfiller stories, and I'm sure this thing will go where it needs to go because we're old buddies at this point. But so a little background for the listener. I mean, you were an originator, and then you've really transcended your talents into being a leader and being a coach and a lot of other great things. And then the market turned. And one of the things that I know about you is that you really love to lead by being in the trenches so you have credibility. And you've dove back into being an originator here over the last 3 or 4 months. And I know that wasn't easy for you because, I mean, anybody that kind of thought, well, that part of my career is now behind me and now you're diving back in. I mean, that might be a little bit challenging. But I want to know what are you learning right now about yourself as an originator, and what are some of the things that you're doing right now to lead by example in this market that we're in the summer of 2023?
Yeah, the first thing that comes up for me when I hear that is empathy, right? I think there's so many times from the coaching chair or a leadership chair that I can say things to people when they come. But when I'm getting on the phone and I'm calling new real estate agents that I haven't called before, they're not super cold for me, or I'm quoting a rate that I'm insecure about to a client. You really know how hard it is. And I think if you're continuing to do that every single day and you're getting those victories, there's just this sense of realness that comes, and it just is really real. You like, man, you feel their pain because you're literally going through it too. And I think it just gives me a lot of ammunition and fuel because I then can take those struggles and what keeps me up at night is, man, how can I add value? Like, to my agent partners, to my loan officers, to my friends, to my colleagues, to our community at large, right? And I want to be creative. I want to help provide solutions. I think my desire is to really impact people's lives in a positive way, right? And so I think by getting back in the chair and doing the things that need to be done on a weekly basis, that's what comes up for me is it's not that I didn't know the pain was there before, Tim, but it's a lot more real when you're also going through the exact same thing. I think it just gives me a perspective that for whatever reason, it's just not the same if I'm not actually doing it. I hope that makes sense.
It does. It does. Well, and that's the thing about you that I know that, the listener may not know, but I'm having a conversation right now with truly one of the great empaths that I've ever known. I mean, you feel big, bro. Like that's one of the most beautiful things about you is, I mean, you got a lot of beautiful qualities about you, everything from being an amazing teacher and an amazing entertainer on our retreats. I mean, you know, just the nights at the fire pits with you playing the guitar and but that feeling part of you, I would imagine has a lot to do with your leadership skills. And before we get there, because I do want to go into, your leadership philosophies and maybe how you infuse empathy and compassion into that equation to be a great leader. I'd love to have a couple of tactical suggestions right out of the gate as to what you're doing right now to create business. As an example, when we were in Austin, we were talking in that breakout about the gratitude calls, right? Like, so I'd love for you to unpack that because I thought that was one of the great ideas that came out of that retreat.
Yeah, man. That is for me, what you've taught me is that gratitude's not just about the receiver, right? It's also about the giver. And I think right now a lot of us are struggling with mindset. We're struggling with confidence. And I was just one of those people who I was trying to make the transition from, being the originator to being the leader. And I think a lot of people, were doing that and are doing that. And I feel like I was pretty successful at that. But because of that, I had kind of gotten out of the the fundamental things that I had been doing, like calling my past client database. It just wasn't possible for a lot of us to stay in touch the way that we were. And I heard this script that a lot of people were using, calling, the I'm sorry script. Tim, I'm sorry, I haven't reached out, but and I'm going to take better care of you. That was the gist of the script, and it just did not resonate for me because uh, while I wish I could have reached out to my clients, um, I created this gratitude script, and it felt like I was in integrity when I was saying this script. And so I think anytime you're reaching out, for me, integrity is key because it gives me more confidence and it just comes across a lot better. And so instead of using that script to reach out to my clients, I went back all the way to like 2007, 2006. I still had some phone numbers, and it was amazing when I look back that far. A lot of people still had home phones, but the script was, Tim, hey, it's Mark Robertson, and you may not remember, man, but I did a loan for you in Thousand Oaks back in 2007. I was working at a company called XYZ, and this mortgage market has been really challenging, and I don't even know if you're aware, but it's humbled me. It's made me super humble, and it shouldn't have taken a market that's been difficult to make me grateful, but it has. And I'm just one of those people that wants you to know that that transaction came early on in my career, and it's meaningful to me. I remember exactly the process that we went through and how kind you were to me and how much I enjoyed working with your family. And so my call is just simply to say thank you, man. I hope that the house has treated you well, and I just wanted to say thanks.
All right, so teaching moment here, like right out of the gate, and thank you. So I was charting what I was feeling when you were saying that. So the first thing is the authenticity and the vulnerability behind the script is so beautiful. And my guard went down like 8 octaves. Like I felt in my heart, like I felt good when you express the gratitude. And there's a lot of brain science behind that, right? Like that when you give gratitude, it evokes dopamine and oxytocin in both the giver and the receiver. So now here I am sitting there listening to you share this beautiful script that is from your heart. And it's so important that it comes. And what you said that is critical is that the script needs to resonate for you. It can't be somebody else's script. And that's what I love the most about what you said is that you're talking about something that you needed to feel in your heart. So then it would come from that place. And in delivering it from that place, I'm able to feel you. And as a result, the end game of that is I'm like, what a nice guy. And I want to help this guy. The natural affect of somebody giving something to you is that you want to reciprocate him. And that's Cialdini's law of reciprocity 101 that we both know about. And even if, and it's so awesome that that call normally is asking for something. And you made that call nothing about that and only about giving. And if you make a bunch of those calls, you're going to create a bunch of people out there who are going to be thinking about how they can help you in return because you just helped them by brightening their day a little bit and sharing something from your heart. Awesome, dude. I mean, if nobody does anything from this call and gets any wisdom from Mark's coaching, there it is right there. Anything else? I know that you've been doing this with realtors as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, I called all of the listing and buy agents, from a couple of years ago and said the same thing. And it is like a miracle call. Like I agree with you. If you don't do anything else, just do this. It 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 was great. The script is the same. Hey Tim, we closed on 123 Main Street last year. I was the lender on that transaction, and you were the listing agent. And my team and I just really enjoyed working with you. It's been a challenging market. Certainly, a lot has changed since we were going through that transaction together. And I just wanted to say thank you. I don't take these things for granted, and I know that um, you know it's not a given. And so I just wanted to say thanks. I appreciate it. It was great working with you. And some people would say thank you, but what I would get is like the most common answer was, "Oh my gosh, you're doing it. You are doing it right. Like this is
Mm.
amazing." And I have 10 lenders a day call me and ask me to go coffee. Like, and one woman is like, "Hey, you're my guy." And she's a legend. I mean, we knew each other. She's been around for a long time. She's sunsetting, but she's a legend. And she was like, "You are my number one lender because you made this call." So I think people just need, to your point, they need realness. They need you to to really hear authenticity on the phone. I think they can really feel it, to your point. And I think it is the difference maker. And those calls were just really powerful. And they were more helpful for me and my energy and my mindset than they were for any of the receivers on the other end. You can't make 5 of those calls and truly feel into how lucky you are to be in this career and to make the type of money that we do and to have the impact that we're able to have and not feel like, man, okay, like this is what it's about, right? Because I think, especially recently, it's kind of easy to lose focus on what it's really about.
Yeah, there's a few things coming forward for me right now that I want to dive even deeper into on this. So it strikes me that everybody's winning in this formula. I mean, you're calling this realtor up and you're catching them totally off guard. You you're not selling anything. You're just offering your heart from a truly genuine place of gratitude. And I'm not surprised to hear that some of them are almost speechless because they don't have their counter script for this, man. I mean, they've got all their counter scripts built around, hey, do you want to go have coffee with me? Or I want to know if there's any deals that you want me to pre-qualify or whatever. This isn't one they ever get. So you just completely disarm them. And again, if you make them feel something, just feel like appreciated, the natural tendencies are going to want more of that. And you become a magnet that draws people, to you. What I'm aware of, bro, is that for you and I mean, we're a lot alike. I mean, in many ways. I mean, we have high degree of sensitivity. We strive to do our best to not be in our ego. You and I had that voice text exchange a couple of weeks ago about that. But there are people that I don't know that they have the access to their feelings as significantly as say you and I do. And when, you've heard me say a million times, the truth is the easiest script. There's nothing to memorize. And it's like, that's why, like, whenever any of you give me a scenario, it's pretty easy for me to come up with a script for it, because all I do is I just kind of go inward and say, well, what do I feel? I mean, it's on autopilot. It's not, and I'm sure you do the same thing. I'm sure you didn't have to practice the script. I mean, you just kind of go to that place inside of you that can feel, and then you just speak from that place, and that's where the magic happens. Have you encountered people who are struggling to embody this approach, that maybe it isn't as easy as it is for you to just access that feeling and speak from your heart?
For sure. And a lot of people who are scared to do it, even if they do have access, it just, and I think that borders between that integrity thing, like, hey man, I just don't feel it, live it, believe it. And it's fear of putting themselves out there. The story that I tell myself, Tim, is that, I until I met you and a lot of the mentors in my life, my vulnerability and my access to my feelings was a huge weakness. Like I grew up in the Midwest where, you know, we settled balls and strikes with fist fights, and there weren't parents around. And, it I was a feeler even when I was young. Like there's just I don't have the ability to be anything else. And so I always, heard things like crybaby and, you know,
Mm,
any term like that. I heard that. And so I think I just internalized it and felt like it was a weakness and did a lot of things to push that vulnerability down. And I don't know if it's just my age, or the times that we're living in, but it seems like now there's books being written on it, and there's leadership styles where it's being appreciated a lot more. And so I've just now, in the last 5 years of my life, I'd say, and I think you had a lot to do with helping me discover that that's really a strength. And so I do my best to like slowly bring people around who are in that case, and just say like, okay, like what does fit for you, Tim? Like how can we say thank you in a way that you feel like is palatable for you? Like what tell me what you would say. And they'll fire it back at me, and I'll help them polish it up a little bit, and then off they go. And what I've seen is probably the same thing you've seen. As I'm sitting here talking to you, I'm like, oh, Tim's seen this like on steroids. But you start to see people make these these leaps, these small little jumps. And if you look at like, man, where were they when we first started working together, and where are they now? And it's like unbelievable, like the progress, that a lot of people make, and how they are able to articulate what they truly feel, inside. And that's really rewarding for me when I sit here and think about it. It's like, I'm really proud of those people, of course. And so I'm sure that, I'm putting up a mirror for you, because I know you've done that in my life, and so many others, but it's so fulfilling. It's really fulfilling.
yeah, I loved your answer. I think what I'm hearing, starting with the belief that your vulnerability was a weakness, and 5 years or so ago, having some awareness that it's actually a superpower, because it is. I mean, I've seen it way too many times in you, man, to know what a superpower it really is. But there's that story, right? Like, we're all operating from a narrative that says, that either we can't do it, or it's wrong to do it, or it's frightening, or what if I'm not accepted? Because it does take bravery, right? Like, if you come from, and I really want to applaud you, because coming from a place of having been called a crybaby, and then leaning into saying, no, I'm not going to believe that story anymore. I'm going to be authentically me and leverage that gift that I have, is a true act of bravery. And now you're using it as a catalyst for the connection with your past client database and with real estate agents, and you're using that to generate new relationships. Let's quantify that for a minute, and then I want to go to the place of where you use that same degree of vulnerability as a leader, because I think that there's a lot to learn in this area too, especially with the difficult transitions that you've been through in the last couple of years within your business as a leader. But before we go there, the results, are there any tangible results other than the the superstar real estate agent that says you're now my lender? Are there others stories you could tell about the success that has come from making these phone calls?
I mean, I consider all of them a success. It definitely provided immediate leads into our database. Yeah, I don't know exactly what those results are. I knew them at the time that I was talking, to our group, but I don't recall what they are now. But there wasn't one call. I mean, the worst thing I got, the very worst call was, "Hey, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I've got to go right now." And that was it. So there's never been a call that's been more easy to make, impactful, that's gotten better results. I can tell you right now that as a second degree result, I'm closing $5 million worth of business this month, based on a call to get back in touch. That call led to a, "Hey, what are you doing? I've got a bridge loan." That bridge loan led to, two sides that is going to be a $5 million transaction that will close this month. We're funding it on Tuesday. And so all of that started from a rekindling of one of those calls. And it was probably a 3-month thing, but that's one tangible in your pocket result that came at the start from a gratitude call.
Yeah, you know what I love the most about your answer is the fact that you didn't have this long list of tangible results, because I think that's the trap. If we go into these calls looking for a result, we're now no longer speaking from that place of true gratitude and giving. Now we're egoically attached to an outcome. And what I am certain is that there will be a lot of tangible results of this and intangibles, as you just described. Meaning, somebody's going to call you 7 months from now and they're going to say, "Hey, I need to be pre-approved because we're going to, buy another house." And that's going to be somebody that you made that gratitude call to 7.5 months ago. And it's just that they remembered you. They'll never forget the way you made them feel. And that's the part that I really want everybody to get here is, it's not what you say, it's the way that you make them feel, that connection that causes people to want to come back and work with you and reward you because they are grateful to you in return. So, and then that ancillary part, right? Like, I mean, I have so many stories, just like the one that you told about, like you get this one deal, and it's like $120,000 FHA streamline refi. But what you didn't realize is that person then introduced you to somebody they knew. And when you look back on it 6 years later, from that referral, you got like 8 other deals, right? I mean, there's this like web that is created. And it's just about trusting that if you make the calls, the results will take care of themselves. What about, as it,
That's it.
go ahead.
That's exactly right. Just one point I want to hit on. It was really tempting when people responded well. It was like a dopamine hit, and like, man, this is amazing, to go right into something else that was, more self-serving. And so I had to work really hard not to do that. And I think it did benefit me, because there was always a follow-up call that they would actually take, because of that. And so, um, just for what it's worth, anybody who tries these, you get something going and people start asking questions. Of course, answer their questions, but I would just encourage you to try to be clean and pure and just say thank you, and great things will come from it.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing you say there is that there's the definite subtle seductive intention of like, "Oh, wow, they responded well to me. Now I'd like to roll into my old script and say, hey, would you like to get together for a cup of coffee?" And now all of a sudden you've completely aborted the intention. So there will be that overture, I would imagine, from the person of like, "Well, hey, I'm glad that you called. And, I'm wondering, where are rates right now? Or what are you seeing in the market? Or, blah, 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 blah." So don't, what I'm hearing you say, and confirm this, please, is don't run away from that interaction if they want it, but don't instigate or institute the interaction in that initial call. Know that there's another call that can be made 2 weeks later, after this first call takes place, that you could use as a follow-up.
Tim, I'm so happy that you asked that, and I really want to dive into it. But before I do that, can we just like put an exclamation point on this? Because the intention of my call was just to say thank you, man. I want you to really receive that first of all, and just know that I'm truly grateful, and I feel like it's important for me to express that. Now, just talking about what we've got going, like here's what I see going on in the market, and then go into it,
Mhm,
but
mhm.
make it a big deal that this is not what that was about, and they're the ones that are steering the conversation that way. Because think about it on the other end, and like this is goes back into what we said. If I'm receiving this call from my mortgage guy that I haven't heard from since 2007, and he calls to say thank you, what are you really thinking, Tim?
Yeah, that he's got an agenda.
Yeah, what's coming, right? And so if you do that, if they react really well and like they can feel your heart and all those things, in my opinion, you've totally diluted the strength of that call because you chose to go into it. In reality, what happens is rates are going to come down. Everyone everywhere is going to talk about tapping their homes for equity and get cash out. And they're going to be like, man, I'm calling Robertson. He called me. He was truly grateful for my business. That means something to me. Right. And I just wanted to make sure not to muddy the waters with what I was really trying to do. And I think that's the message that I want to get across.
Yeah, this kind of ties into the strategy you've heard me talk about before. Strategy is really an inappropriate word. I actually should steer clear of using that word, but the philosophy. And you've heard the Terry Morler story about how, I just gave and gave and gave and gave and gave until finally she just said to me one day, I feel like I'm cheating on my husband. And I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, I've give all my business to Eric, and I've been working for 7 years, but I should be giving it to you. And I'm like, oh, well, like, oh, I'm not, I, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make you feel uncomfortable. This was never about me trying to pursue you for business. Obviously, at some point in time, if we were to work together, that would be great because you're amazing. But I don't want you to feel any pressure. I respect your relationship. The more that you don't try to close somebody and you're just genuinely kind, the more uncomfortable it starts to feel to them, because they start to feel like they want to do something to reciprocate, and you're not. The minute that you then put the sales pitch on, then it's like, gotcha. That's what this was about. Now I can throw up my guard and throw up all my objections and run for the hills like they do with every other lender. You got to just slowly, I hate to say this really sounds awful, but it's like you cast the line out and then you slowly reel them in over time.
Hmm.
But do it from that authentic place. And that's the important thing. So as it relates to leadership, okay, so just recap. Vulnerability used to be perceived as a weakness. Now it's perceived as a strength. So happy to hear that. Glad that you finally woke up to your own superpower.
Thank you, buddy.
Yeah, yeah.
You deserve a lot of credit there.
Oh, well, my pleasure, and it's been my pleasure to watch it unfold. How do you infuse vulnerability into your leadership equation?
Yeah, I mean, part of it is just so I'll just give you a real life example. I said on a call, there's like 100 of our originators, like, "Hey, it's already June, everyone. It may not feel like it. I mean, if you looked at my numbers, it would seem like it's February, but it's really June, right? So it's a little bit self-deprecating, but that's genuinely how I feel. Like, man, I really should have more numbers than this, and I didn't think anything of that, but two different people. One, like, made me cry, which is not hard, but he sent me this voice text that was like, dude, when you said that, it just made me feel like I was normal and that I wasn't the only one in the trenches. And like, I feel like somebody in your position, it might be hard for you to say something like that. And I just appreciate that it's not always, rainbows and butterflies. And it was just it was a minute long, heartfelt message. And I was like, holy cow. Like, I just had no idea. But that's just one of the ways in leadership that I try to bring my vulnerability I wear my heart on my sleeve, and everything is the truth. I don't try to hide anything from one another, or from my people, and I don't think too much of it, but it's cool when you realize that it's making a difference for someone.
What are the common denominators of top originators in the mortgage business? They're well scripted. They have a system for marketing themselves that generates leads. They manage an effective database and they have strong referral partner relationships. The other common denominator of many great originators is that they have a business and life plan, a roadmap, a guide for them to achieve success, and they have an ally, a coach, who assists them in the successful implementation of that plan. Performance Experts Performance Accelerator private one-on-one, one-year coaching program is now accepting applications. This is my company, and these are my certified coaches that specialize in the mortgage business. Go to www.mortgagecoachingnow.com and click on Get a Coach, or go to the show notes and click on the link that's provided in this episode. Now let's get back to the show. So what I heard there was, by being vulnerable, you took somebody who felt alone and made them not feel alone. And they went, oh, him too. Oh, wow. Okay. So it's not just me. And that felt good and comforting to that person, which is a major component of leadership. And I've been playing with this formula. I haven't shared it with you, I don't believe, but the formula is that, so a friend of mine once told me a long time ago, she said, this is when I was single and I was trying to find a partner. And she's like, Tim, what's more important than love is trust. Because without trust, you can't have love. If the person doesn't feel totally trusting of you, they won't lower their armor and expose their heart. So there's just no love available. And that always stuck with me. And then I was thinking about this, 6 months ago as it related to leadership. And I was thinking it applies there too. You can't lead somebody if they don't trust you. They're not going to follow you if they don't have trust in you. Now, there are a lot of ways to build trust. I mean, you could have a clear vision. You could be, you could bring your A game on a consistent basis. You could, lead by example, et cetera, et cetera. But also vulnerability creates trust. So if people know that you're being real with them, especially in the hard times, look, it's easy to be a great leader in 2021 when there's just plenty of money you could throw at whatever need you have, and everybody's happy. But it's in these kind of markets that true leadership comes to the surface. And I think that a lot of leaders make the mistake, and I'd love to get your opinion on this, of pretending like everything is okay, because they have this narrative that is, I can't show my weakness because if I do, it's going to make them frightened and they're going to run away, or they're not going to feel safe. But I think it's actually the opposite. I think that it's being real and providing solutions simultaneous to that is the hallmark of great leadership. Like, look, I'm scared too, or it's hard for me too, and here's what we're going to do, and then displaying that you're committed to that plan, and people can get behind that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Bingo. I mean, that's it. That's the recipe, right? Like I don't feel good about calling all my past clients. Okay, like I could definitely say thank you to them because they've given me a life that is absolutely unbelievable, beyond anything I ever dreamed of. Hey guys, I'm scared to call my past clients, but I'm super grateful. Here are the scripts that I used. That was me to a T. That's exactly what I do in all things. It's like, hey guys, I'm really struggling with this. Who needs more lead generation? I do. Okay, look, here's the thing that I did that is integrity. Here's how I used it. Here's how many calls I made. Here's the results I got. Like, I'll show people that I'm actually making calls. And I think it's exactly like you said. Like, if I say, dang, I'm scared to quote these rates, they have a 7 in front of them. How are you guys doing it? It's like, okay, like, we're collaborating now on how to like solve the problem. And I think that to me is great leadership. It's what I want, from my leaders. And so I think that formula is perfect, Tim. It perfectly sums up how I try to live. And I think it's a great recipe.
Awesome. Let's I want to segue into a couple of tactical strategies that I know that you have created, invented, created, whatever you want to call it, and then you can add any others to the equation too that I may be unaware of. So as a leader within Neo Home Loans and a coach within Triibe, I know that you've brought a couple of things to the equation that have been very helpful to originators in today's market. One of them being game film, which I'd love for you to share about the origin of that. And I love the name, by the way. And the second one being the topic of the bulletproof buyer, which a year ago in May, when we were in Santa Cruz together, I think it was a year ago in May, or maybe it's 2 years ago in May, when you were on stage and we were all riffing on that idea, and it continued to evolve and develop. Let's talk about both of those.
Yeah. So again, that they were born out of exactly what you and I were just talking about. I am a guy who gets a lot out of, okay, it's great that you told me you're doing all these things, Tim. Like, can I watch you make this call? I want to hear what the objection is and how you overcome it. And I want to see you do 10 or 15 of these calls. And then I'm going to go back and make this script of mine, and I'm going to boss it up, and I'm going to explode. But I just need to see, I need to see Roger Bannister run the 4 minute mile before I can run one. And so that's really it came from that. And so I was like, man, we need game film. Like, we can share internally any of our things. And so we're actually taking a client through a consult. Now we have Zoom. Let's record this. And I'm sending it to you guys to give me feedback. Like, where can I get better? Right. And I want to see yours. And Ryan Grant got a hold of the concept and, of course, went ape with it, which is one of the most amazing things about, our partnership is you see this now. It's incumbent in our culture, and all kinds of people are sending game film on things all the time. And you're like, oh man, let me watch how this, and you just take a little nugget from what Tim says and what Ryan says and what Sean says and what Dustin says and what Justin says. And it's like, then you add all these nuggets and you hear these things and you have seen people successfully overcome them, and you have all this confidence that you're borrowing from other people, because you're kind of group learning. And it has been just an amazing thing for my career, but I'm also really proud of it, that it's part of our culture, and that we go into, just like a football team on Monday after the Sunday game, goes in with the coaches and they watch game film for hours and hours and hours and say, hey, what could you have done better right here? What was the client trying to tell you right here? It's the same concept. We spend so much time, in the business, and very little time sharpening our axe, if you will. And I feel like just having this be part of the culture, it's not only helped me, it's helped countless other people borrow the confidence they need, be able to look and learn and do on their own time. So I love this concept.
It's a brilliant idea, and it totally resonates for me as a sports fan. I mean, you and I are both big baseball fans, and it's what a pitcher does after every as soon as he gets removed from the game. You see him on the iPad in the dugout, looking at the pitch sequences and what pitches got hit and learning from it. Right. So I mean, I love it. And I could see where it could take off like wildfire within a culture. Tell us now about the Bulletproof Buyer program.
Yeah, this is one of those things that I feel has gotten so much leverage. But again, just waking up at night and thinking about, man, how can I provide value to my agents, to my clients, to all of the loan officers, the ops staff? Here's what it really needs. And people were talking about this appraisal gap strategy, and people were talking about the marketing and man, what's going to happen with rates, and kind of taking a version of the marketing forecast. And people were talking about having a TBD underwrite. And I was walking with Josh Metal. I still remember it. And I was like, Josh, we have to make all
So
three of
first of
these.
all, let me stop. Josh was walking. Was he hurt?
Yeah, he was running miles ahead, and I was like,
yes.
slow down.
Yeah,
Put your
exactly.
shirt on. I have to talk to you.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
And I was like, man, we're gonna call it the Bulletproof Buyer. And he was like, hey, send this to me. And I was like, man, I think this is gonna be great. And so I told him the idea and how we could case it. And And we've just refined and refined and refined. And I need to give Josh a ton of credit because he's made it look amazing. The marketing has been amazing, and it's a package deal. But it was so good. Like to your point, that might have been 2 years ago that we were talking about it, and now the market is multiple offers again. There for a minute, it went to a buyer's market, and now we went to buy downs and that sort of thing, and now we're back to this bulletproof buyer, which is just a marketing package where a bulletproof buyer is getting a little history on what's gone on in the market and what we might expect going forward so that they can make like an empowered decision. Then it's an appraisal gap strategy, which is pretty prevalent in our market. And then it's getting their commitment in exchange for having them completely underwritten so that we can remove the appraisal and loan contingency, and we call it the bulletproof buyer. And it's a great presentation. I take every buyer through it, and I take all my agents through it. So it's a tool that I'm using for conversion. Tim, if you're my client and you're a buyer, I'm going to take you through this process, and then I'm going to show you your options. And I'm going to say, look, Tim, if you want the next house and you're trying to compete against all cash, this is how we do it. This is how we can make your offer strong. If you want to proceed, I need to know that we're the best fit for you and your family. And I will then pay to have this thing underwritten and processed, and you will be completely good to go on the loan side. We can remove that loan contingency, and we can remove this appraisal contingency, and that will tell the seller that you mean business. And it's really helped on my conversion. So it's just a great tool. But if you're Tim, the realtor, I say, Tim, what sort of strategy? When's the last time you made an offer on a property that had multiple offers, and because you had a loan, you guys didn't get that offer accepted? And they're like, yesterday, and the day before, and the day before that.
Mm-hmm.
And do you have 10 minutes? I'll just screen share with you right now. We don't have to go to coffee. That's one of my favorite things, by the way, because all these lenders are calling, asking to go to coffee. I'm like, we don't have to go to coffee. Let me just show you this real quick, and you can see if it's valuable or not. And then I walk them through it. By the way, it takes about 20, 25 minutes, always goes 30 minutes. And they're like, dang, this is awesome. And it's a great, it's a great lead gen strategy too. And so I, I love this collaboration. I love this tool, and I feel like it's another great thing that almost any loan officer anywhere can do. And it's just what our clients need right now. They're so focused on rate, and we're so insecure about rate. But what they really need is a great strategy to obtain a house in today's market. And so I just love this.
So there's always important phrases and lines in scripting, and you just laid out another mic drop script right there. And I don't want people that are listening to miss something so incredibly important that you said in there, which was, if you have determined that you'd like to move forward with me, and I'm paraphrasing, I think you said it slightly differently, I will pay to have your loan approved. That's an important line, because what you're doing, and I don't need to be telling you this, I know that you know what you're doing, but I want everybody else to understand this, is that you're creating a verbal and emotional contract with that pre-approved buyer, which says, look, I've given you the option of going out and shopping before you're ready to move forward. And I'm paying, and you are, by the way, all of you are, as originators, paying to have that loan underwritten, because you're having somebody actually do it and spend time on it. And that's the thing that I get all the time, is that, I get rate shopped, and I have these pre-approved buyers that end up blowing me off and going somewhere else, and they're nobody's loyal. You just don't have the right scripting. You just didn't, you rushed them. You talked them into going with you, and they were never fully baked. And then you're pissed off about it later. Well, that's kind of on you. Like, you have to be brave enough to say, hey, essentially, hey, look, keep shopping if that's what you need to do, and let me know when you're ready, because once you are ready, I'm going to put my team and my money behind this to make sure I put you in a favorable position to be able to compete in this highly competitive market. But it takes some confidence to say that. Do you want to comment on any of that? But I'm really glad that you inserted that in there.
Yeah, there's two things. There's a few different ways to say what Tim just said, and I've learned them from Tyler Osby, from Kevin Brierton. They have different lines in what I say too. Like, Tim, If this resonates with you and you feel like we're the best fit for you and your family, the next step is that I'm going to have this completely underwritten, which is going to cost me money. And so I love the line, if this resonates with you. You can even wait. Tim, does this resonate with you? Cool. So if you think that we're going to be the best family, the next step is this, right? But I have had some things, especially if they take longer, float around. And so we've been trying to close a little bit harder than that, which is tough for me because it's that integrity thing that we're talking about. Like, I don't like that as a consumer. So it's tough for me to like get into that, right? But truth is the best script, as my mentor Tim says. Hey, Tim, the next step is to get you completely underwritten. And this is actually a part where it's more than just my time that I'm giving here. I have to start paying my processor and my underwriter to fully underwrite the file. And I want to do this for you because I think it's going to make a huge difference for you and your family in getting the home. But I can't do that unless I'm sure that you guys are going to go with us, because the only way we get paid is when this thing funds. And so I just want to make sure that you understand both of those things and make sure that we're on the same page before I move forward. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And then almost always they'll say, yeah, heck yeah. And sometimes they'll say, I'll have to like look around, and I'll say, of course, you're just in the discovery mode. And I want to make sure, that we're the best fit for you. And Ryan's even got some questions that I'll send. Sometimes people are really intriguing, because always after you go through this bulletproof buyer presentation and you talk about this strategy, the next person 9 times out of 10 is going to be nowhere close to you, right? But here's what Burris taught me. Tim, can I ask you one favor? When you're out there looking, will you, because I've spent so much time on this, so much of my experience in really navigating this San Diego marketplace and knowing how to get your offer accepted, could we just agree that you won't like volunteer my strategy with the next person? And because that has value and it has a lot of worth, and that's really gonna like, make a difference in how your offer is going to go in the strategy to get the house accepted. And I just want to make sure we're on the same page with that. And that will take somebody from taking this amazing mortgage strategy that you may have put together for them and then just shopping it around for the best deal. Maybe they're still going to do that, but not without knowing that, like, hey, a lot of my value is how I put this together. And I don't want you to just go give the keys to the kingdom to somebody else. So I learned that from Burris, and like, I just feel like that's genius.
What's really cool about what you were just sharing? Yeah, I've been saying this for 25 years, that scripting is about one key line, one key phrase, and it's about consistently evaluating your scripting and your presentation skills and looking to tweak and adjust them, looking for where the holes are. Like where am I losing deals? Like having the ability to really analyze, all right, let's stick with baseball, right? You've heard me use the metaphor. Where did I swing and miss here? Like, why didn't this work? Because this works a lot of the time. It didn't work here. Most loan originators just get upset and they, go make the next phone call. But it's like taking a moment to reflect and say, where was there a hole there? And then seeking to tweak and adjust. And oftentimes it comes from something that you heard someone else say, and you just name dropped Burris, you name dropped Tyler. Can't remember who the other person was, or I don't know the other person was. But see, that's the thing, is your scripting will keep getting better and tighter and more successful by inserting a sentence that you didn't say before that will make the difference on one more person out of 20 or one more person out of 15 saying yes to you. And that's the art form of selling and being properly scripted.
Yeah, that is such a good point. And that's exactly why I started working on this. We're doing all this work getting the offer accepted, and then they're getting a better deal. And I feel like in at least one case, I thought the agent was in on it too. They wanted my pre-approval letter because they knew when the listing agent saw that I was on the loan, it was going to help them. And so I've stopped giving the pre-approval letter until I know, and the conversation with always when people are like, well, what's your conversation with the person? And it's like, Tim, part of like what we do and the experience that we have and the security and the safety that we can provide to the listing agent, they know that we're going to get your loan closed. And so if you decide that we're the best fit, I'll send the pre-approval letter over to the agent. Since you're still in discovery mode, I totally respect that. Let me know when you've made a decision. It doesn't, nobody ever scoffs at it, and that's how the conversation goes. But I've stopped just giving my value. Because part of the value is the 20 years I've been working in this environment and executing every single time and having that piece of paper that says you've been totally pre-approved by the team. And I'm sure a lot of the loan officers that are listening to this, stop giving that away. If people are going to go and just put that ticket in and then shop around for the lowest mortgage, you have to let them know then that that's not how this game goes. And so Tyler's line is there any reason, Tim, that once you go into escrow that you wouldn't be using our services?
Mhm.
And I like that line too. I think it's brilliant, right? And if they say yes, the rate, then you can just sit and overcome that objection, and it gives you that moment. So that's another one of those lines. But he was like, no, just don't give the letter. And so then the conversation's like, well, what if the agent is like, hey, well, why won't you pre-approve them? And if the conversation is the same with the agent. Hey, what's happened a lot of times is we've had listing agents call us and complain that we're not actually doing the loan. And it was advertised with the contract as if we were, and that we're going to represent them, and it makes a big difference. And so it's damaging our credibility in town, and like that's the only thing that we have. And so if they're committed to us, we're going to be committed to them.
Go ahead, keep going.
Nope, nope, you go.
So I'm so glad you brought up that phrase by Tyler. And he and I are buddies, so this is certainly no criticism of any kind. I could never use that line. I don't like the line because it would make me feel uncomfortable to say it. And that doesn't mean that it's not a bad line. It just means that it's not comfortable for me, to your point. Like, it has to be comfortable for you. And the reason that it's not comfortable for me, very honestly, is I'm just too insecure. So if I said to somebody, hey, is there any reason that you can think of that if you were to go in escrow that you wouldn't be working with us? I would be too afraid that the answer that I would get would be something other than a resounding, no chance, I'm going with you. Okay, so what I'm saying here is, as someone listening to this, you got to check in with yourself as to how comfortable are you with saying things, because the level of comfort that you have will have a gigantic impact on the way you deliver it. So for me, just to juxtapose another option, I would always use my need to be defending of my team when talking about the same thing. I hope you can appreciate this, Mark, but one of the things that's super important to me as a leader, as a company owner, which I was when I was back doing loans, is that I have to really govern the time of my team and their workload and the heart and soul that they put in every loan that we do as a team together. So it's really important for me to make sure that you understand that if you give me the green light and say that you want to move forward with working with us, that I'm going to end up paying. I didn't use that line, but I love that line that you used. I'm going to end up paying to have your loan approved. I'd say I'm going to ask them to put a lot of time into providing you with terrific customer service, and I need to do my very best to make sure that every loan that we engage in closes, because it would be totally unfair to them. Point being is this: it's always easier for me to sell the team and my responsibility to govern their time and protect them than it is to somehow say, hey, do you think you'll want to work with me? Like, that feels super uncomfortable to me. And I know Tyler doesn't say it that way. In closing, everybody needs to try on the different hats of these different ideas for themselves and see what resonates for you, and then use what works for you. But there are certain principles that must be deployed if you want to curtail the type of theft or rate shopping or whatever the scenarios are that we're talking about here.
Yep.
Anything you want to comment on regarding that?
No, I just hope all of us start to do that. We don't give the pre-approval letter. It's we can give them rates. We can, they can shop, they can do whatever, but don't just give that pre-approval letter so that they can take advantage of having the cake and eat it too. I think it's giving a lot of our value away. So I love this
Yeah.
this strategy.
Yeah. So I know that, in having worked with you for a long time, we all have our greatest strengths, and then we have blind spots, things that are not our strengths or that don't come so easy to us. For you, comes really easy to move into your heart and speak from this place of integrity and vulnerability, and people can really feel you. And like I said before, a couple of times, it's your superpower. I also realize that accountability and structure can sometimes be a challenge for you. And I know that you've worked really hard over the last several years to really try to address those issues. And I think that for those that are listening that say, hey, you know what, that's me, I'd love to hear what he's doing to create structure and accountability for himself. I'm wondering if you do a little teaching around that.
Yeah. So I've always found it really hard to stick to something that's, really structured. So I've done a lot of work. I went to Jocko's Echelon Front I've read, Extreme Ownership. I've time blocked. I've done the Genius exercise with you, Tim, and measured my time blocking. Where am I spending my time? And what I found works best for me is that I set up non-negotiables in my calendar that are recurring. So, for instance, I've been doing BNI for like maybe 15 years. It's like it's just I'm a lifer in that in that forum. And so I know every Wednesday I'm going to see 20 people from my sphere of influence, 30 people, 40 people from my sphere of influence. And no matter what, I'm going to be in front of those 30 people. I have a standing agent pitch session that I co-host, and I've invited other loan officers to that. But on Tuesdays, I see anywhere from at a minimum 50 and at the high point 80 agents come for an hour to this event. I have an agent meeting every other Monday with a couple of agent groups. I have a mastermind meeting with 7 top agents every other Wednesday. And so if I don't do any prospecting, I don't have time to make any calls. I fall off the wagon as I have been prone to do from time to time. I am going to see 150 people probably a week because I have these standing meetings that are set up. Same with the loan officers that I work with. Like, I don't want to be out of touch with them when I get overwhelmed, right? And so every other week I've got a 30-minute coaching session with them to just, I call it a coaching session, but it's really just a check-in. Like, Tim, I want to know, like, how are you doing? What can I help with? Where are you at? Is there any issues with your team? And so no one ever gets too far away from me, because if I don't do that, I have not found the discipline that I need to not reel myself in exactly when I need to, and I find myself in pain, hurt. Like a loan officer leaves and goes to another company, and I didn't see it coming. That happened to me 6 years ago. It was devastating. I just no one can tell me even to this day that that wasn't my fault in some way, shape, or form. And I'm sure that it wasn't, but like I just knew that I wasn't giving him the time that I wanted to give him, right? And so putting these things in place helps me feel like I'm living a life that's integrity, and I can put my head on the pillow at night, and it's easier for me to manage than really trying to keep a really rigid schedule, which is tough for me.
So what I heard you say is that you addressed the fact that left to your own devices, sometimes a week or two could go by and you could find yourself not having um, executed on some of the things that you know are very critical pillars to your business, such as getting in front of real estate agents, getting in front of the originators that you lead and checking in with them. And you made them non-negotiable by burning them into your calendar as a non-negotiable appointment to ensure that those things actually get executed on. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay, so the question that I would have, I want to maybe see if we can go a little bit deeper on that and just figure out, so why do you not blow off those appointments?
Hmm. Because I've given my word that I'm gonna be there to other people, and I don't
Mm,
want to let anybody down.
yeah. Yeah, I'm super glad I asked that question because I wrote down one word on my little legal pad here was fear. Because like I'm aware of how powerful of a driving force, as we've talked about at so many retreats together, fear can be. And I had this sense that would be a good question because what you just defined in my mind was that you made the fear of letting people down and not being in your integrity, which is a value that's clearly important to you because you brought it up several times during this conversation. You made that fear so great that it compels you to take the actions that you need to take to be successful.
For sure.
That's a really cool juxtaposition. It's like playing a little Jedi mind trick within your self-conscious. And isn't it interesting? So what I'm hearing you say then is that you will blow off the appointments with yourself.
100%. Yeah. I, you know, what I realize is I'm a pleaser. I want to say
Mhm.
yes. I want people to be happy. I want to help them. I want to, in some way, be responsible for their success. I'm sure it's ego, but it's also just, it goes back to my childhood and just having a great dad that I always wanted to be proud of me. And I think still to this day, that's the life that I'm living. And so if you ask me to do something, Tim, I'm not going to say no. I'm just going to say yes and yes and yes and yes and yes until like, man, you can't do it. And then you're letting everybody down. And I think that's the trap. So when you have these non-negotiables in your calendar that you don't step over, that's the boundary. And that's how you're like, man, okay, I, I'm not going to let these people down. I'm not going to let these people down. And it just allows me, the structure that I need, but still gives me the flow that I need to be able to live my life a little more fluid. It doesn't feel like so stifling, I guess.
So you're basically, you have to work in all of the yeses to everybody else around those burned in appointments, knowing that you can't bail on those. It's actually interesting. Voorhees and I had this epiphany one day that we've been doing the same thing for most of our life, not knowing that, not ever having talked about it, which is we do the same thing with vacations. So, I mean, for the last 20 years, I'm a little bit more nimble with it now. But for years, when I was an originator, like when I decided to make the commitment that I'm going to go on a minimum of 8 weeks vacation a year, unplugged, not checking in, not checking email, all of that. When I made that firm commitment back in the late 90s, I think it was, I decided, okay, how are you going to create leverage for yourself? Well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to always be 1 year into the future on all of my booked vacations, and they're all going to be paid for. I'm not quite that hardcore about it anymore, but like as an example, like I would have in those days, I would have had like next spring already booked, and here we are in June, and paid for to ensure that there's no way I'm getting out of it, and that I will have to work around that, my work stuff, but that the life stuff was important. You're kind of doing the same thing when you think about it with these important appointments with agents, with your loan officers that you're leading, et cetera. You're burning them in and working the rest around it.
Yeah.
Because left to your own
Yeah, but
devices as a people pleaser, you'll say yes to too many things. Go ahead. Sorry.
yep, it's inspiring though. Like I need to do it more in my personal life, and I think that's an area that I can grow. I'm finding ways to weave that in, but it's not as burned in as my work stuff is. So when I heard you say that about vacation, it was like, man, there's a growth edge for you. So it's inspiring to hear you say that, dude.
What are the common denominators of top originators in the mortgage business? They're well scripted. They have a system for marketing themselves that generates leads. They manage an effective database, and they have strong referral partner relationships. The other common denominator of many great originators is that they have a business and life plan, a roadmap, a guide for them to achieve success, and they have an ally, a coach, who assists them in the successful implementation of that plan. Performance Experts Performance Accelerator private one-on-one 1-year coaching program is now accepting applications. This is my company, and these are my certified coaches that specialize in the mortgage business. Go to www.mortgagecoachingnow.com and click on Get a Coach, or go to the show notes and click on the link that's provided in this episode. Now let's get back to the show. It would be a crime to have a conversation with you and not talk about, yourself and working on yourself and your growth and what you're working on a personal level. It's one of the things that I admire, your ability to self-reflect, your self-awareness, and your deep desire to learn and grow and be a better human. What are you working on right now that's a growth edge for you? And if there's any books you're reading or any other support you're getting, you mentioned Jocko going to his retreat. Love to hear what you're doing.
Yeah, I am working on discipline again. It's funny. I had this journey that actually started when I reread the Four Agreements at your assignment actually. And the first of the Four Agreements is to be impeccable with your word, and that hits my integrity chord. And so there's this guilt thing that I feel when I'm not doing that, and so I say yes to a lot of stuff. And as I've taken a lot on, so my journey has looked like this. I decided, to jump into leadership. I had this production business. I started, coaching. I just took on a lot of things that were um, okay to handle in a market that was pretty easy. And as the market got tough, it was really difficult for me to handle. And that, along with all the emotional change, was overwhelming. And I I slid off of showing up the way that I wanted to show up, and so I kind of re-enrolled in. I read that book again, and I started just doing something every day that I knew that I could do. Just the same way I got myself there the last time. And so I have a morning routine where I haven't committed to a lot of things, but like for instance, I've done 50 push-ups a day. I've never missed a day of doing those push-ups this year. And so no matter what, I know that I'm going to get those 50 push-ups in. I'm getting in the cold in the morning. Every morning I'm taking a cold shower. I've probably been doing that for like 4 years now. I'm hiking 3 times a week with my little guy, which allows me to get time with him, which is very important to me, but I'm finding it hard to do. You can probably feel the guilt a little bit there. Um, but he's going with me on these hikes, and like there's no phones. We're just having conversations. Today he put a 10-pound weight in his bag and tried to tell me that it was a 2-pound weight for my Peloton bike, but I couldn't figure out why why he didn't want to keep hiking. Um, and I'm just working on executing on those small things and slowly getting back to a place where I'm really confident because I'm living up to the promises that I've made for myself. And this is kind of a rewind, for me, because I really worked on this and I got to a good place and I can feel myself getting to a better place. But it just I don't know if it's something that didn't stick. Um, but it's more of like just what I need right now. You said, hey, take inventory and look at what you're doing, and wherever the holes are, you collect these scripts from other people. That's exactly what I'm doing. This is where the hole is in my life. It's like where I need to focus. Like, how can I simplify my life so that I'm fulfilling the agreements that I'm making? And some of those are it's really hard to let go of some of those things. So that's what I'm working on right now.
It's amazing how seductive being human is, right? I mean, we all have good intentions, or most of us have very good intentions, and yes, and yet at the same time, we can easily be seduced into going off track. I was just finding the same thing. Like I think you know this about me, how much like spiritual and personal development lights me up, and it's just a part of who I am and what I enjoy personally to engage in on a consistent basis. And I just went to Dr. Joe in Denver at the end of May, and I was like sitting there going, why has it been 3.5 years since I've been here? Like, what are you doing, dude? Like, you love this shit. You love the community. You know that it's important for your growth. You need it. Like, lock it in and commit to it. So, like, as it relates to like your time with your little boy, I mean, I think that's really awesome. 3 days a week, you guys are hiking. I mean, he's always going to remember those hikes. And I bet you there's going to be a point in time where he's going to be doing that with his son because he has such fond memories of the connection with you. Bravo, man. What about
Thanks,
reading?
dude.
You doing any reading right now that's helpful to
Yeah,
you?
I formed a book club with, my branches in my region, and people have kind of like chosen into that. And we're doing a classic right now. This was suggested by one of my loan officers, Kevin Brierton, and we're doing Rich Dad, Poor Dad. We just I finished so many books because of this book club. We just read a couple of chapters a week, and we just read "Can't Hurt Me" by David Goggins. Man, you want to talk about discipline? Holy cow! Like, if you haven't read that book, it's such a good book. It's especially because I've been doing a lot of self-help books. That one was just really interesting, and so we've read a lot of stuff. Eric Bible's in that group. Chris Ledley's in that group. There's Kevin Brierton. There's just a lot of really good people in that group, and so it's been a lot of fun. But yeah, I'm reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, which, by the way, um, financially, it has been a very difficult year for Amber and I, and I think the the intonation, that's the wrong word, but I think what people do when their finances are tough, especially if it's been really good and now it's a lot tougher, is they kind of hide and they just hope that the big month is coming. And so Rich Dad Poor Dad has taught a lot of fundamentals and like really helped me continue to like look at my bottom line, keep working on those finances, even though it may not be a time of immense pride for a lot of people right now. It's really a great time to tighten the belt, illuminate that, look at those things and really bring it to the forefront and work on it. And so that's another place where I just really want to I really want to get to a good spot financially as well. So that's another place I'd say I'm working.
When I want to talk about the book club for a second, so I'm curious. So I was talking to Darren McClellan the other day, and such a good dude, man. What a joy it was to have him in L360 this year. And he's starting a book club, and they're reading The Untethered Soul by
Oh, I
Michael
love that
Singer.
book.
And I wanted to ask him, but I'll ask you: are you doing like a debrief? You guys meet once a week, and you talk about what you read, or is there like how's that working?
Yeah, we read two chapters and then we meet at lunchtime and we all go around and we kind of have this same formula and we talk about those two chapters and like people will bring up a point. Jessica Acuna runs the book club and she always has questions prepared. And it's great for the book, but it's amazing to just hear other people's perspectives about the same thing that you just read, and you get this same group learning mentality in this collaborative environment. As you can see, like I get off on that, man. I love a community. I love working with a team. I love my partnership. I love the collaborative environment that we have at this company. I love L360 and the masters group, like how we all get together and just collaborate around issues. It's tremendously abundant and it's a energetic, fulfilling way to like live life. And so, yes, I'm getting through books, but I love these debriefs.
Hmm.
To
Hmm.
answer your question, it's so much more than the book.
Yeah, well, it's I've never been a part of a book club ever, so you've got my interest here in the sense that it strikes me that like reading a book can be. I'm actually on this really great little tear right now where I've read two absolutely amazing books in the last 45 days that I just couldn't put down. But it was kind of a lonely feeling because I love them. It's like going to see a movie by yourself. And, very few people have seen that movie and you don't really have anybody to talk to about it or unpack it with. So that sounds like a really cool process. I definitely think that that's something that I might enjoy myself. Um,
We'll make sure to get you an invite, Tim.
yeah, you gotta make sure you clear that with Leds. He
Next
probably
book.
he might have some objections to that. Um, so what about? I love to ask this question as we wind down this conversation that has been thoroughly enjoyable for me. So I have a feeling that this will be a good question for you in particular. Is if you could go into a time machine as the current version of you and have a conversation with the 18-year-old Mark Robertson and have, a couple of minutes to just give him some advice as he's about to go into his 19th year. Knowing what you know now, what would you say to him?
Man, that's a tough question. I mean, I think I definitely would tell him he's awesome. And that a lot of the stuff he's worried about now are going to be the things that people admire about him in the future. Um, God, Tim. um, I think that's the thing, I think about, um, um, I think that I would definitely say that. And just to, I think that, yeah, I think that's the main thing. I had such a heartache and torture at that time in my my life over, um, not stuffing a lot of things down and not just living my life like, yeah, crazy man that I was. But I think that would be my main advice to myself is that it's all going to be okay.
Oh, thank God. I was a little worried there that Danny and Josh and RG and Leds and Bible and Sosie would have a hard time with the fact that you went an hour and 15 minutes and didn't cry. So I'm really glad we finally got to that point, brother.
Yeah, well, there were several times where I was choked up. I was just trying to choke I was trying to truck through it. So,
Yeah.
uh, thank you,
Brother,
man.
yeah, thank you, bro. Thanks for being you, and thanks for helping out so many people. And I'm glad that I'm really glad that you're getting an opportunity to do what feels to me is perhaps the most on purpose thing for you, which is coaching people. I think that it's a gift that you have, your ability to combine um, your knowledge and wisdom of 20 years of being in the mortgage business with your open heart and your caring for people. Um, I really wish you so much luck on your evolution in that path because I think you're uniquely suited for it.
Man, thank you, man. And thank you, Tim, for just your mentorship and how much you've poured into me through these years. I really, really value our relationship, both our friendship and just the mentorship that you've provided me. And I really want you to receive that. It's so meaningful, not just to me, but to the whole community that you've built. Like the everything that you've put together with L360 and Costa Rica, and I know you know what I'm talking about. um, it's not just the gifts that you've given me and helped me discover, but that community is so valuable.
Mm.
And you have a lot of agency in building that, putting it together alongside your team, and it's meaningful to me, dude. And I'm just happy to be a part of it. So thank you, man.
You're so welcome. I think that we're both really blessed to be a part of it. It's never lost on me as to how lucky I am too. So, um, looking forward to many more great times ahead. Thank you for being such a great teacher, for being on my show. I'm really, really grateful to have you, brother.
Yeah, bud. Thank you so much, Tim.
Bye bye, everyone.